want to answer this one, chat. Let me the chat. Do you guys like this one? How to forgive your parents after childhood trauma? Which the funny part of this question is I've talked about this. Even if you had a good relationship with your parents, you still have to forgive them. It's just different degrees. So if you had a bad relationship, you got to forgive them 100%. But throughout your life as an adult, you have to psychically and verbally is even better. Everyone has to forgive their parents because like no one's perfect. Everyone comes up short somewhat, right? And so how do you forgive your parents after childhood trauma? I'll give the meme answer. You would have done a way worse job raising yourself. Like if your parents were children and you were the adult, your little millennial zoomer ass would have fucking abandoned your parents. So remember that your parents always did a better job than you. If the tables were turned, right? That's definitely how God would see it too. Like the responsible boomers versus the millennials and zoomers, where even the hustle nature of the millennial and zoomer, kind of like he'll hustle work, but he won't make time for his girlfriend and the normal stuff. But yeah, how do you forgive your parents after childhood trauma?
That's a tough question because you have to question whether it was deliberate, right? If there was a deliberate sort of abuse there, it may be very difficult to do so. But I think in the majority of cases that I've seen, it's a matter of expectations, which I think is what you're describing as well, right? It's a matter of beginning to lower those expectations.
Yeah, like they're just human, right?
Yes.
And
I go back and forth on this because in some cases I have seen, this is through my clinical experience, I've seen cases where there are some bad parents out there, very deliberate, very much carrying the trauma forward. But if that's not the case, if you sense that it wasn't deliberate, you have to go in and assume intentionality, right? Was it their intention to hurt you in this way, or are they the product of a sense of victimhood as well? Right? Well, are they the product of some trauma of themselves that they've experienced themselves, right?
Yeah. Is it wild to say 90% of cases nowadays, with even the conservatives have a victim mindset, right? But is it wild to say 90% of the cases it's usually the child being a bitch? Like if you think about it, the child never once considers that his parents had to go to work, deal with their family losses, and all that stuff in later life. They had to deal with so many pressures that the child doesn't even get to see, invisible pressures, right? That the parents just talk to each other, they don't talk to the kids about it. When I think of it as like, there's no way most of these cases of hating their parents is because the parents are demons. There's no way. The deliberate thing is kind of crazy to me. Or if it is deliberate, you find out that the parents went through some real fucked up shit. Right? Like, let's say your dad beat the shit out of you when you were 13, whatever. And then you find out that dad had his fucking, family killed in the war. Yeah. Right? How bad of a dad is that?
Yeah, I would make what I would say is that the relationship that you have with your parents, if it's one where you carry a lot of resentment towards them, if it's one where you feel like you can't forgive them, it's because the relationship was stunted at some younger age, right? So the relationship you have with them is one of when you were maybe 10 years old. Right? So the idea is you have to revisit that relationship. You have to reapproach it as an adult. You have to do the work that it would take to bring you back emotionally to your chronological age, right? So emotionally, you have the mentality of a 25-year-old or 26-year-old, and then go back and revisit that relationship rather than to allow yourself to have your relationship with your parents be dictated by your younger self, right? That younger self is creating the relationship between you and your parents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like he still exists in you.
He still exists in you, and if that relationship with your parents is stunted at a young age, at the point at which you were experiencing the trauma, then that relationship it basically freezes your relationship with your parents, and that stays for your entire life. And so the same sense of vulnerability you experience as a child will come up always with your parents. The same sense of resentment, frustration, anger, guilt, shame, all these things will just continue to come up again.
Interesting. So,
right.
I think most of the cases is they feel abandoned by the parents at a young age.
Correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
But
all right.
How do you deal with that? What I'm saying is that the experience of abandonment is a subjective experience that the child has. But if that relationship is frozen in that moment, you'll always experience a sense of abandonment. So the idea is you have to create a new relationship with your parents as an adult now.
And would you say, do you talk to them about the part of the life where it all went wrong? Do you bring that up?
Yeah, active imagination, inner child work, writing to your parents. These are all like very practical things you can do. The most effective techniques I've ever experienced. I had a client who was I asked them to go back and talk to their younger self, right? So this is active imagination. This is very Jungian. It's psychoanalytic as well. Go back and talk to your younger self and ask yourself, when you imagine that conversation with your younger self, how old is that person? That'll tell you the point at which you experienced if there is a trauma, and that's the point at which you stop developing emotionally, interpersonally.
Mm. And then yeah, I know you say for trauma. Yeah. But I know you.
Chat, not to you. I think you know a lot of these concepts.
But you once said that technically the trauma there's no antidote to it. It's more like you're putting.
It's integration of it. Right? Yeah, we talked about this last week, right? There's a splitting that happens in infancy, which is good, right? The infant needs to be able to split the good mother from the bad mother so it can feed safely, right? It needs to breastfeed safely. The dangers of splitting in adulthood is that your life is very dichotomous. Your identity is very dichotomous.
I got an answer that you're probably is going to say, I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I don't care. I'm just going to say it because we're talking about the mind, and sometimes it's whatever, a little paradoxical. But I would say the greatest way to forgive your parents for small, medium, big things is when you become a winner in life. And I know there's winners who are still bitter, but there's something that happened to me when I started winning in the career, women, all that. There's something that happened to me where it's like I just couldn't be angry at them. If, but I know you're gonna say, how do you get to the winning part of your life without unpacking that?
Right.
I
So
don't.
you're
I don't remember
projecting a lot of your
unpacking.
insecurities and frustrations onto your parents, and
But I don't remember
those insecurities.
I don't remember unpacking, sitting down with my parents and blah blah blah. I just remember
They may
winning.
not have anything to do with them. They just became the target of a lot of the anger that you had towards the world.
But I still
Right? Isn't
remember
that the argument?
when I became a winner in life. There was I sat down and had brunch with my parents and our parents, and
Yes, but
there was no anger. There was no anger anymore.
no, there would be no anger because there was no resentment you had towards your parents. They just
Doesn't everyone have something?
well, what I'm referring to is called displacement, right? The frustrations and the resentments that you have against the world are directed towards the parents because it's a very easy place, right? The parents are very unconditionally loving, and so they'll always forgive you. The mother will always forgive you.
Yeah.
So that's why we're most critical and insulting to our moms, especially.
I still think that the question isn't speaking to the masses because I don't believe most people who had both parents in the picture. I don't believe that the parents came up short because then we wouldn't have this many beta males in society. Beta males comes from like too much comfort. Right? Like if you're gonna forgive your mama for anything as a Zoomer, is that she was overbearing and she made you a bitch.
So what I was saying earlier was that you may have some frustration against the world, which you project onto you displace and project onto the parents, or it could be the reverse, which I think is a lot of what's happening these days. That there's a lot of frustration at the father for having, quote unquote, abandoned them, because maybe the father's not in the picture, and that's being directed onto the world, and it's being directed onto a lot of people who fulfill the archetype of a father, right? So the Donald Trumps, the Jordan Petersons, all these people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah.
If you understand object relations, everything